The Texas sun, a molten disk in the cloudless sky, hammered down on Texas City, baking the asphalt to a shimmering mirage. The air hung thick and heavy, a humid blanket that clung to everything it touched. In the heart of this simmering landscape, Edward Doc Amy walked with his friend, Kevin, the heat radiating off the cracked pavement mirroring the turmoil churning within him. Texas City, a place etched with the grime of refineries and the grit of hard-working people, felt particularly oppressive today. It wasn't just the oppressive humidity, it was the weight of his past, a specter he thought he had finally outrun. He was wrong. Doc hadn't always been Document. Back then, he was just Eddie, a kid swallowed by the shadows of Texas City's underbelly. Poverty was a constant companion, a gnawing hunger that fueled desperation. His father, a good man broken by the oil refinery's layoffs, had succumbed to the bottle. His mother worked tirelessly, cleaning houses for meager wages, but it was never enough. Eddie drifted, finding solace in the company of older, rougher kids. They offered camaraderie, a sense of belonging, and, unfortunately, a path paved with poor choices. One night, fueled by cheap beer and a misguided sense of loyalty, Eddie found himself outside a convenience store with a gun in his hand. The robbery was a blur, a chaotic mix of adrenaline and fear. He remembered the cashier's wide, terrified eyes, the shaky feel of the weapon, and the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He didn't want to hurt anyone. He just wanted the money, enough to help his mother pay the bills. But things spiraled out of control. Then came the flashing red and blue lights, the screech of tires, and the booming voice of Officer Choppa ordering him to freeze. The arrest was swift and brutal. The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into his wrists, a physical manifestation of the shame that would haunt him for years to come. He was guilty, and he knew it. The prison gates clanged shut behind Eddie, a deafening finality that echoed the emptiness in his soul. Inside, the world was a stark contrast of gray, concrete, and harsh rules. He was surrounded by hardened criminals, men who had long abandoned any pretense of remorse. The first few months were a brutal initiation, a constant struggle for survival. He learned to keep his head down, to avoid trouble, to become invisible. But even in the darkest corners, hope can flicker. Eddie found an unexpected lifeline in the prison chaplain, a kind and patient man named Father Michael. Father Michael saw something in Eddie, a spark of goodness buried beneath layers of anger and regret. He encouraged Eddie to confront his past, to acknowledge the pain he had caused, and to seek forgiveness. Slowly, painstakingly, Eddie began to change. He started attending the chaplain services, finding solace in the scriptures and the shared prayers. He learned to read, devouring books on philosophy, history, and religion. He began to understand the true consequences of his actions, the ripple effect of pain and suffering he had unleashed. The remorse was agonizing. He wrote letters to his mother, filled with apologies and promises to do better. He knew he could never undo what he had done, but he could dedicate his life to making amends. He started helping other inmates, tutoring them in reading and writing, offering a listening ear and a word of encouragement. He finally understood what it meant to be truly free, not just physically, but spiritually. He emerged from prison a different man, Edward Amy, but forever marked by the name Doc, a moniker earned during his time inside for his quiet demeanor and surprising wisdom. Officer David Choppa, a man carved from granite and seasoned by years on the force, patrolled the streets of Texas City with a watchful eye. He wasn't a man of many words, but his actions spoke volumes. He believed in order, in justice, and in upholding the law, even when it was unpopular. He had seen the worst of humanity, the depravity and violence that lurked in the shadows of the city. He had also seen the best, the acts of courage and compassion that reminded him why he had chosen this path. He didn't remember every arrest he made, the faces blurring together in a kaleidoscope of despair and defiance. But some cases stuck with him, etched into his memory like scars. He vaguely recalled the convenience store robbery, the young kid with the frightened eyes and the shaky gun. Just another statistic, another casualty of the city's harsh realities. He had followed procedure, made the arrest, and moved on. Choppa wasn't a heartless man, but he couldn't afford to dwell on the past. He had a job to do, a community to protect. He believed in redemption, in second chances, but he also knew that some people were beyond saving. He just hoped that the young man he had arrested years ago had found a way to turn his life around. He knew the streets of Texas City could chew you up and spit you out, leaving you a shell of your former self. The memory of that night, the weight of his past, threatened to overwhelm Doc as he watched Officer Choppa patrol. His heart pounded against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the street. He could turn around, walk away, pretend he hadn't seen him. But he knew he couldn't. He had come too far, changed too much, to run from his past. "I have to do this, Kevin," Doc said, his voice barely a whisper. "I need to try." Kevin, still skeptical, placed a hand on Doc's shoulder. "Just be careful, man. You don't know how he'll react." Doc took a deep breath and started across the street. Each step was a battle against his own fear and doubt. He could feel Officer Choppa's eyes on him, a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. He imagined the officer reaching for his gun, the familiar feeling of handcuffs biting into his wrists. As he got closer, he could see the lines etched on Officer Choppa's face, the weariness in his eyes. This wasn't just a symbol of the law. This was a man, a human being, burdened by his own struggles. He realized that he wasn't just facing his past, he was facing another person's present. He reached the other side of the street and stopped a few feet from Officer Choppa. The officer's hand instinctively moved towards his holster, but he hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "Officer Choppa," Doc said, his voice trembling slightly. "Do you remember me?" Choppa studied him for a long moment, his gaze unwavering. "I've seen a lot of faces, son. Refresh my memory." Doc swallowed hard. "Edward Amy. I robbed a convenience store a few years back. You arrested me." A flicker of recognition crossed Choppa's face. "Amy. Yeah, I remember. You gave us a bit of trouble that night." The tension was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Kevin watched from across the street, his heart pounding in his chest. He was ready to intervene if things turned sour. Doc took another deep breath and extended his hand. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. I was young and stupid, and I made a terrible mistake. I've changed, officer. I'm trying to make amends." Choppa stared at Doc's outstretched hand, his expression unreadable. He had seen this before, criminals claiming to have turned their lives around, only to fall back into their old ways. He was hesitant to trust, but there was something in Doc's eyes, a sincerity that he couldn't ignore. After what felt like an eternity, Officer Choppa slowly extended his own hand and clasped Doc's. The handshake was firm, a silent acknowledgement of the past, and a cautious acceptance of the present. "I appreciate that, Amy," Choppa said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "It takes courage to admit you were wrong." Then Doc did something completely unexpected. He bowed his head slightly. "Officer, would you mind if we prayed together? I've been praying for the police, for your safety and well-being. I'd like to thank God for giving me a second chance." Choppa was taken aback. He wasn't a particularly religious man, but he respected faith. He looked into Doc's eyes and saw genuine sincerity, a plea for connection and forgiveness. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, Amy," he said. "Let's pray." Doc closed his eyes and began to pray, his voice soft but clear. He thanked God for his blessings, for the opportunity to change, and for the guidance that had led him to this moment. He prayed for Officer Choppa, for his protection and strength, and for all the men and women who served and protected the community. Choppa bowed his head as well, listening to Doc's words. He didn't know what to say, but he felt a sense of peace wash over him, a calmness he hadn't felt in a long time. Kevin, still watching from across the street, couldn't believe what he was seeing. He quickly pulled out his phone and snapped a photo, capturing the powerful moment of reconciliation. The prayer lasted only a few minutes, but its impact was profound. When Doc finished, he looked up at Officer Choppa, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, officer," Doc said. "That means more than you know." Choppa nodded, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "You're welcome, Amy. Just keep doing the right thing." As Doc and Officer Choppa went their separate ways, a stunned Kevin approached Document. What just happened?" he stammered, still trying to process the scene he had just witnessed. Doc smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I've been praying for police officers, Kevin. Today was my chance to thank one who unknowingly changed my life." He didn't elaborate, but Kevin could see the peace radiating from him. For the first time, Kevin started to believe in Doc's transformation. Maybe, just maybe, people could truly change. Officer Choppa continued his patrol, but the encounter had left a mark on him. He still wasn't sure what to make of Doc's transformation, but he couldn't deny the sincerity he had felt during the prayer. He thought about his own life, his own struggles, and the importance of forgiveness, both for others and for himself. Kevin posted the photo he had taken on social media, captioning it with a simple message: "Sometimes forgiveness is the most powerful weapon." The photo quickly went viral, sparking a wave of reactions. Some people praised Doc's courage and Choppa's willingness to participate. Others were skeptical, questioning Doc's motives and warning against trusting former criminals. But overall, the photo sparked a much-needed conversation about redemption, forgiveness, and the possibility of bridging divides. In the days that followed, Doc continued his work in the community, helping those in need and sharing his story of transformation. He became a symbol of hope for those struggling to overcome their pasts. Officer Choppa continued to serve his community, but with a newfound sense of empathy and understanding. He realized that his job wasn't just about enforcing the law. It was about building relationships and fostering trust. The encounter between Doc and Officer Choppa was a small event in the grand scheme of things, but it had a ripple effect, reminding people that even in the darkest of times, hope and forgiveness are always possible. The Texas sun still beat down on Texas City, but now it felt a little warmer, a little brighter. The air still hung heavy, but it was now filled with the scent of possibility, the promise of a better future. This story underscores the profound power of transformation and forgiveness. It illustrates that individuals, even those who have made serious mistakes, are capable of genuine change. Doc's journey from a desperate criminal to a man dedicated to helping others demonstrates the potential for redemption within us all. It challenges us to look beyond past actions and recognize the capacity for good that exists in every human being. Furthermore, the story highlights the importance of empathy and understanding in bridging divides. Officer Choppa's willingness to engage with Doc, despite his initial skepticism, exemplifies the power of human connection. It suggests that fostering trust and offering forgiveness can lead to healing and reconciliation, not only for individuals, but also for entire communities. Ultimately, the story promotes a message of hope, reminding us that even in the face of adversity, compassion and understanding can pave the way for a brighter future.